Hi, it's Mark from the Digging Deep podcast. Just a quick one before we get started. Over the past few weeks, we've had more than 15,000 views and listens across the podcast, which is brilliant. So first of all, thank you. But what we are seeing is that a lot of people are watching and listening and not subscribing. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to subscribe, whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a big difference and helps us keep growing, bringing in great guests and improving the show each week. Also, give us a follow on social to keep up with everything we've got going on. Right, let's get on with this week's episode.
Go. USA.
Yeah, UK.
Hey, I've got myself a bit of pizza because I was holding up the flag, of the US.
Oh, mate, I'm actually jealous. I've had an English sandwich. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah, I could do a pizza. I thought, sharing's caring and all that.
Pizza from yesterday.
Oh no, I can't do that.
Typical English habit, eat half a pizza, tuck it in the fridge, warm it up later.
No, I can't do that. I've got to have fresh pizza. I can't do the reheat. I had a mate who used to carry on his kebab in the morning. He'd have his kebab.
Oh no,
He'd carry on
you
the
still
kebab
look a bit.
in the morning.
You still look a bit low down there, Mark. Like if you lost a couple of inches in your.
I must have, mate. I don't actually know.
I'll come down.
Yeah, like, what's that like?
Hey?
I've got move. What's that like? Is that better?
Yeah, it's all right.
I feel like I'm filling the screen up. I feel it's a bit, you know what I mean? I feel like, look at my head's the size
Well, you're 6 foot something, aren't you?
Yeah, but that's why I probably look low down. Do you know what I mean? I've got to make the desk and everything fit me, ain't I?
What? Well, look.
Can I just mode as well? I think your backdrop's better than mine as well.
Is it?
yeah.
Hey, the thing is, right, you said it would take us ages to do that. And it took me about 5 minutes, but it must have just rushed your one.
I was going to say, you got 4 minutes, 30 seconds on yours and 30 seconds on mine.
I've got Trump behind my side. I've got everyone. I've got them all there. FIFA, you name it. They're all behind me.
Behind me. It looks like I'm sitting in an ice age still.
Well, this is it. You are 4-2 down or 4.5, 2.5 down or whatever you are.
Yeah, Brian Cox is going to come on in a minute and tell me what species were alive down there.
Anyway, look, let's get on to it. Hole 7. We won't get into what's doing our heading today because we'll just get straight in because we've got lots to get through.
Right.
So, I can't remember. I was on odds. You was on evens. So, this is an odd. I'll start straight in, yeah?
Yeah, go for it, mate. Yeah.
Well, at hole 7, as you know, we're doing the Ryder Cup of plant hire. This is part 2. Quite long episode, so it's quite full of stats and hard, so if you like stats, it's great. The flow and the banter might be not the same as the other episodes that we have, but it's a good question. So hole 7, here we are. Who actually gives the customer the better hire experience? This is deliberately different from size, profitability, and utilisation. Customer service is about speed, local knowledge, availability, problem solving, account support, responsiveness, digital convenience, and what happens when something goes wrong. That's what we all know. This is also a harder hole to score because there's no single Europe versus US customer satisfaction index covering plant hire or anything else really. But so we're not saying we're making it up here, but we're just going to give our best shot. So I'm going to tee off. America's strongest argument is consistency of scale. That's what I'm going to go with. United Rentals has built an explicit service proposition around rapid response, quality assurance, specialist advice, and handling complex requirements. It states that its service model extends from the first equipment recommendation through to invoicing and emergency response, including midnight deliveries when necessary. That's a quote from them. That matters because servicing a small local builder is one thing. Servicing a national infrastructure contractor across multiple states is something else entirely. America's largest rental companies can give major customers one account, national pricing, central billing, equipment tracking, specialist divisions, large project support, and a network capable of supporting work over enormous distances. That's a very, very powerful customer proposition. My argument, the American model says, why should the customer have to manage 10 rental suppliers? If you're running a national contractor, dealing with dozens of local hire companies creates administrative costs. One huge supplier can potentially provide earth moving, access, power, pumps, you name it, our tools, anything you need, storage, even source the specialist equipment under one commercial relationship. That's the customer service at a different level. That's the route that the UK market tried to go down and probably still does. And it'll find a cycle that it'll go back to that eventually. So my argument, customer service isn't just whether Dave at the depot knows your name. If I'm running $1 billion infrastructure business, I want one account, one invoice structure, one digital system, and a confidence that the equipment will turn up whenever the project is running. Never mind time or day or time of the week. America can deliver that at a scale Europe struggles to match. That's my argument.
Well, look, let's give you something to play. Let's play against you here, mate. I mean, look, Europe's answer is different. Local service does matter. Loxam operates around 1,120 branches across 30 countries, and with strategic positions, customer satisfaction and local service as a central core to its business model. Boels similarly emphasises local branch accessibility alongside central customer service support, with 750 branches in its customer service network. So this European model gives customers something large, centralised organisations can sometimes lose. So we've got local relationships, a depot manager you may know, the customer's sites, its people, the type of equipment it prefers, where tomorrow's job is. And that's important as well. And whether the customer's urgent phone call genuinely needs sorting before 7 a.m, that is incredibly difficult to reproduce for an app or a call centre. Then you've got the digital counter argument. Europe isn't stuck in an analogue service model. Loxam says its customer journey is now digitalised end to end, including online ordering, electronic signatures, online contact management, equipment geolocation, usage monitoring, consumption monitoring, and remote troubleshooting. And it also is deploying AI in predictive maintenance and fleet management. So that's important because the usual argument is, USA's technology, Europe's local service. But you know what? The reality is more nuanced. The best European groups are trying to offer both. The danger with enormous companies is becoming easy to deal with when everything goes right and impossible to deal with when something goes wrong. And plant hire, as we've always said, Mark, is still a people business. If your excavator fails at 7 tomorrow morning, you don't just want to log a ticket. You want someone who knows your business to answer the phone and organise fixing it. So the real customer service questions are, and this is where it gets interesting. Suppose two businesses offer identical machines at identical rates. Company A gives you a brilliant app, national coverage, central billing, and enormous availability. But Company B gives you a local manager who answers immediately, knows your site, gets a replacement machine to you in 90 minutes. Which one actually gives you a better service? And to be honest, Mark, there isn't an obvious answer. It largely depends on the customer. And that's why this hole is much tighter than the financial holes.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I'm trying to think of some famous golf quotes that might help us out on this. I suppose what you're saying is play the course, not the opponent. It's horses for courses, really, and depending on where you are. But let's go through the stats. I mean, United Rentals explicitly promotes rapid response, specialist project solutions, quality assurance, emergency deliveries, support from equipment selection through invoicing. Its enormous network also gives national customers, this is them quoting, not me, something very few European operators can replicate across an integrated market. Europe, though, 1,100 to 1,200 branches, 30 countries, that's Loxam, almost 150 branches for Boels. Customer service network. Loxam is digitalised the customer journey from ordering to and contracts through to monitor and remote troubleshooting. So the killer stat there, I suppose, is really a financial state statistic. I'll give you a stato that's contrast. United Rentals can service a national customer across more than 1,000 US locations. But Loxam operate more than 1,100 branches across 30 countries, two enormous networks, but built around quite different market structures, So we don't have to have a reliable independent continent-wide network promoter score customer satisfaction, I suppose. Customer satisfaction equals X and Europe equals Y, we can't really market the claims, the marketing claims that we're better than you are. So I think it comes down to that. What I've just said there is play the course, not the opponent. Find out what your customer base really looks like. Would you rather have an enormous supply of three brilliant local or three brilliant local ones? We've spoken in the UK, I suppose, around that, haven't we? We've said that the independents are winning that must be that way. But the US, I can imagine that the last thing you want to do is, if you're national in that size of country, you're going from North to South America, you want to deal with a different business, perhaps. I don't know if you'd want to do that. You'd want to initially at least start off with using the same. So, I don't know. What's more important, equipment availability or personal relationships? And you're always going to go on the personal relationship side. You did on with the sales side. So when we debated sales. So in this one, I think, large account national service capability, I think the US does that. But local branch responsiveness, I think the Europe is much stronger than the US. And digital customer service, I think that's kind of a draw there, Mark. So I think, rightly so, I think it should this hole should lay up as a half point.
We've halved it, have we?
Yeah, I think so. Excuse me.
Even score then.
So that puts us like from 4.5 to 1.5 to 5 to 2. So USA still up there, keeping going.
We're coming in. Don't worry about that, mate. You just,
every shot counts, as they say.
You'll be
small improvements, and you're making small improvements as the debate goes on. So let's steam straight ahead. Your go, number 8.
Yeah, so number 8, look, hole 8. As we tee up on hole 8, the subject is transport and logistics. So the question is, who moves rental equipment around the network better, Europe or America? This is not just about who has the most trucks. What we're judging is delivery efficiency, routing, transport recovery, and the ability to move fleet between depots, customer reliability, and the cost of getting equipment to and from site. Transport is one of the hidden profit centres or hidden profit drains in plant hire. So if I fire that over to you then, Mark, for Team USA, perhaps you could talk us through your transport and logistics.
Yeah, well, look, America has an obvious challenge. I think distance is far greater than bigger than Europe. United Rentals have more than 1,000 US locations spread across this enormous country. I mean, we keep on going on about United Rentals, I do, but Jesus Christ, that's a lot of depots to look after, isn't it, Mark? Joking aside, 1,000 depots. That forces the American model to become highly organised, I think. Large US rental companies can provide central dispatch, GPS and telematics are really important to them, surely. Route optimisation, I mean, you don't want to go down the wrong right, do you, in the US? They'll have large transport fleets, cross-branch transfers, national account planning. The scale of United Rentals alone, means it can identify where equipment is needed and move assets between markets rather than leaving standard. That's the advantage of those 1,000 depots. But it's having the right personnel, I think, isn't it? Trying in that depot. Does he understand that he's got underutilisation? He's got too much kit. Can he move it around? if the other one's bonused, old A plant days, remember the other one's bonused on depreciation, and that's part of the P&L. Does he want to take that new equipment or not, or leave it where it is? The US case is therefore not that simple, I don't think. They've got more trucks. They've built logistics systems capable of supporting continental-sized rental networks. My argument, the bigger advantage may be the fleet balancing. Imagine one region suddenly has shortage of 60-foot booms. The other part of the country has the accessibility. So, continental shift, as in probably the extremes of weather. From one to another might be two. You don't want to be up on a 60-foot boom if it's windy and rainy. But down south they might need it and have a shortage of them. National operators can centralise visibility, move machines into stronger markets where you're getting better rates. Do you push it into there and restrict the amount of equipment perhaps that you've got in other areas just to get that working? I think you can manipulate the cost better. Prove it. So I'm improving my utilisation. The transport create, a financial return rather than simply delivering equipment. So it's running as its own business, perhaps. And the Americans had to, I suppose, all their businesses have had to solve logistics in some way or another because of the geography of the country. You can't run 1,400 branches across the states without knowing where every machine is and where it needs to go next. I mean, that's a massive operation. So transport just ain't about delivery when it comes down to the US. It's part of fleet optimization, and it's really important. You get that wrong and you cocked it right up. And perhaps, Mark, they don't get unrealistic calls from a guy in New York saying to a guy down in Los Angeles, "Can I have it there Monday morning, mate, at 7 o'clock?" Do you know what I mean? Or tomorrow, do you know what I mean?
That's it.
So if I can move, what I'm trying to say is, I suppose if I can move 10 idle machines instead of buying another 10, logistics has saved me a serious amount of capital. No? Well, that's my argument. If it's a strong one or not, I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty good, Mark, to be fair, and I'm going to see if I can throw one out there to at least halve the whole, or perhaps we'll might win this one, because Europe's transport challenge is different. The distances may generally be shorter, but the operating environment can be more complicated. And the reason why we've got, European rental companies move equipment through dense cities, congestion zones, low emission zones, different national regulations, international borders, and various varying road restrictions and different environmental requirements. So, if we take Loxam's reporting is particularly useful here because transport is explicitly identified as part of its rental service revenue. So its financial reporting describes additional rental services as including transportation, and also identifies subcontracted transportation among operating costs. This tells us something important. Europe treats transport as a viable commercial service, not merely an overhead. Boels, for example, gives Europe a strong operational case because its current sustainability policy specifically commits the company to improving transport efficiency through smarter routing, lower fuel use, and optimization of delivery processes. In 2025, sustainability reporting also highlights more efficient logistics as an active area of improvement. That matters because transport economics are not just about how quickly did the machine arrive, or, they're actually about how many deliveries a truck completes, empty mileage, fuel consumption, truck utilisation, driver utilisation, and whether collections are coordinated with deliveries. Europe's increasing environmental requirements create a strong incentive to improve all of those. So, in a nutshell, the European argument, I suppose, is Europe potentially has an advantage in network density. Boels operate more than 800 depots in 27 countries. Loxam has an extremely dense European branch network. If the correct equipment is already close to the customer, the best transport strategy may be don't transport it very far in the first place. Sounds obvious, but it's incredibly important. Every unnecessary mile creates fuel, driver time, truck depreciation, emissions, traffic risk, customer delay. So a dense European branch model can shorten the final delivery leg considerably. America might have the phenomenal logistics systems, but Europe can ask a more basic question. Why are we moving the machine 150 miles in the first place? If you've got a dense network and the right equipment positioned locally, you've removed half the logistics problem before a truck even starts.
Yeah, I get you. You've definitely got yourself out the bunker there. Probably just on the green. But here's the debate. It can, where the debate can come quite commercial. A lot of hire companies focus, obviously, on the rental rate, and they lose money on moving the equipment. And I just can't get my head around where we've been in the past, and that's the case. And some companies have got, people don't seem to want to pay for the transport in the UK and Europe, do they? I mean, machine rented contribution £200 and delivery and collection £250. That's when you say, well, I'm not paying more than the rental of the machine. But if the customer, then you end up dipping it down to £150, don't you? You can win the hire, still lose money servicing it. It's crazy, and it's all about, because I suppose in general people don't guarantee a hire, do they? They don't. They say, oh yeah, I'll have it for, I don't know, probably a few weeks, mate, or a few months. I'll have it a few months. How many times that? Or oh, it's 8 weeks, and then a week later I've got to hire it. And you think, well, I've done you a deal on the transport. And I've been stood up for it. So it makes transport recovery just as important as transport efficiency, I think. So, yeah, you might not have to move it as much, but are you getting the rate? Are the US getting the rate and moving it more? I don't know. As you said, Loxam explicitly recalls transportation as an additional service, which I think is a good way of putting it, to be honest with you, Mark, related to its rental activities, which reinforces the transport should be treated like more commercially than disappearing into a general overhead. And there's arguments against and for that, really. Commercially, as an accountant, you want that. I suppose the trouble you've always had is that people do lose hire on transport because they don't see what the true that day's cost of the lorry does standing. And they're trying to get £300 every move, when realistically, if they got 3 or 4 moves at 150, they might cover the cost and more of the vehicle. So I think it's a skill, isn't it, that needs to be taught into the... and I think it comes down to the regions. But why don't you take us through the stats again, and we'll make a decision on this whole.
Yeah, okay. Let's look at the stats then. Look, so USA, they got there's 1,400 plus US locations. United Rentals is a network, nationwide network requiring industrial scale dispatch and fleet balancing. In 2025, reporting identifies scale and technology as fundamental to how it serves customers and manages its business. The American operator's enormous geographic footprint makes logistics capability essential rather than optional. Europe, all right, smaller depots, but 800 plus depots, 27 countries, Boels' current international network. But Boels explicitly targets smarter routing, reduced fuel use, and optimized delivery processes. Loxam explicitly treats transportation as a chargeable additional rental service while separately identifying transportation costs. What I'm saying here is all of this is good evidence of transport being managed as a commercial discipline rather than just a delivery, just chuck the out and hire.
Well, look, we can go over like more detail, but we're trying to move the debate on a little bit. I think we should just go down to, do hire companies, let's ask the audience, do hire companies give too much transport away to secure rental business? One of the things I'd like to hear from people, what's the biggest cost? The truck journey or having the wrong machine sitting in the wrong depot? That's another question. There's plenty of them here. How much empty running is acceptable in the back of your truck? But I've jumped over because I don't want to. We've got a lot to get through, Mark. But if we get straight down into the scoring on this hole, we can just move on. I think, how we scored it here was large network logistics capability. We weighted that 35. Depot density, local fleet position, we weighted that 30%, and transport efficiency and commercial pipeline, we learned it 35. So quite evenly matched. Europe came just under on the large network logistics capability to the US, but then on depot density, local fleet positioning, definitely came on top. But I think transport efficiency, what you've argued there, and the commercial discipline, Europe has a stronger explicit evidence on routing, delivery optimization, and transport as a charged service. So I think for the first time in the series, I think you can only say that although it was a close one, it's outside of the grey area, and Europe definitely need to be awarded a point now.
Yes. A clear win on that one, mate. Lovely.
Yeah. I mean, some of them, Mark, we'll just jump over some of the stuff if we can, if we're running out, at time. So we're going on to
whole nine.
The back nine. So I'd just like to stop there and just really just say, this would have been our half time originally, but it gets much more deeper conversation than what we thought we would. So if you haven't listened to part one, it's a good opportunity. Go back and listen to it, because we've already played 9 holes now. It's the back nine is done. Everything from size, profitability, rental rates through to fleet utilisation, you name it, purchasing, customer care, transport and damage recovery we're going to be discussing. We're up there with around about 5.5 to 3.5 points there. Europe coming back in there. Them half points matter. But there's still 9 points available. So the back nine takes us into some massive areas of rental business, technology, depot strategy, people, sales, used equipment, you name it, acquisitions, sustainability, and then we're going to hit the independents. So same rules, 1 point for winning the hole. Let's get on with it, I suppose. Hole nine. So on the odds, here it is. It's mine, the question. Who is better at making sure the customer, rather than the hire company, pays for damage caused while equipment is on rent? So every time a company knows the problem, every company knows, we've been there, God almighty, do you charge the customer? Customer don't want to pay nothing. If they hired a Ferrari, this is always my argument, same price, some Ferraris the same price as some excavator. But if they scratched the Ferrari, they wouldn't think twice about paying for the paintwork. But you can have a gouge as deep as the Grand Canyon on the back of your 40-tonner, and they won't want to pay for it. So when it comes back, everyone knows, broken lights, panels, punctures, you name it, no one wants to pay for it. The argument starts, the question isn't who has fewer accidents here, it's who has built better commercial systems for damage waiver, evidence, charging and recovery. So I've steamed straight in. For the case for the US, the American model is highly commercial. So those who don't know the model, it's not far away from Europe, but this is it. So let's pick out our friends United again, what they say. They offer a formal rental protection plan. They call it RPP. Rather than relying entirely on individual arguments about damage after the event, So it's a bit like, by the sounds of it, like our damage waiver. Under its current US terms, RPP can limit a customer's financial responsibility for accidental damage or theft, subject to the terms, exclusions and deductible arrangements, obviously. Crucially, it's a chargeable product. The customer pays for risk transfer. That converts something traditionally treated as an operational headache into commercial service. So I'm looking to make money as that. It's an extra for me, like a bucket or an extra bucket. So the commercial model, basically, the American, the risk has price. So if a customer doesn't want full exposure to damage or theft, the rental company can sell protection. That's as simple as that. That's fundamentally the difference between don't worry about it, we'll sort something out after it comes back, damage, that kind of bullshit. The American companies also have the scale to standardise it. So they've got standardised rental contracts, damage procedures, inspection processes. I'm saying all this, customer liability, billing. I think that's pretty much the same as Europe, to be fair, on that size. We've got pretty much the same. But I don't think that the damage waiver of a protection is as evident. It is in small tools, as we all know, but it isn't as evident in plant like it is in America. So this is where the Americans are commercially ruthless in a good way. You know, the equipment belongs to me. You're fucking using it. If you damage it, here's the process. Who's responsible? Did you get your damage waiver? No. Well, piss off. Basically, that's what it is. You know, if I sell you the protection, it's risk-free, isn't it? So that's where I'm going to stand on this argument, Mark. Over to you.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, Europe has exactly the same problem and increasingly sophisticated solutions. Boels offer customers a damage waiver scheme. The scheme is designed to reduce customer liability for accidental damage, subject to its terms and conditions. Importantly, Boels makes clear that the waiver is not an insurance and does not eliminate all customer responsibility. Loxam also operates structured damage waivers arrangements across its markets. So Europe isn't simply handing customers a machine and hoping for the best. Europe potentially has an increasing advantage in the sense that rental companies operate across many different legal jurisdictions and customer environments. That's forced the major groups to develop contractual frameworks capable of dealing with, you know, different insurance arrangements, different customer expectations, different national legislation, and different claims processes. And there is another European consideration, by the way, customer relationships. A £600 damage invoice can sometimes cost you £100,000 a year customer, which is what you were saying, Mark. Do we charge them? Do we not? So good damage recovery isn't necessarily charge absolutely everything. It's recover genuine costs consistently without destroying commercially valuable relationships. So I suppose my EU argument in a nutshell here, as I tee off down the fairway, is you can win the damage argument and lose the customer. So you've got to be careful here. If someone spends $200,000 a year with you and there's a disputed £400 panel, you've got to use some commercial intelligence on it. The clever system distinguishes between genuine abuse and normal wear and tear and something you might sensibly absorb for a major customer.
Yeah, I think that goes back down to I don't think either's right or either's wrong. I think there's a middle ground somewhere that the whole industry should learn from, and that is that we've got to remember that when and I think most of it comes down to contractors, when they price a job, they don't necessarily price all the plant. So the fact that they've got to have plant on the site and they've maybe under-egged it a little bit, they cannot afford to pay damage full stop. And that's where it comes into it, doesn't it? They don't really have a system in the UK, you know, and the hire company takes the smack on the face, I think, you know, just to keep that customer. But, you know, that's what I think, you know. Who wins? We've all got tightened procedures. I think UK and US, I don't think there's any difference in the process. You take photographs now on the way out, you take photographs on the way in. And then it's an argument about how big that scratch is and how deep it isn't, I don't think. So when I look at that, the US and you know, United Rentals, for example, they've invested, as they say on their site, heavily in digitalising the customer's rental journey through to the whole total shebang, really. They can manage equipment contracts, utilisation digitally, but it also allows them to show up to the minute date photographs as they've come back in and their damage. Whereas Europe, the same, I suppose. What you've just said there, it includes all the text there by the looks of it to get the same thing: electronic signatures, you know, photographs on the back of the lorry. But I'll give you. It's my turn, I think. Is it? What are we on? Number 9. It's my turn, I think, to give the stats on this. So, USA recovers. This is the big thing, you know. The USA recovers 83% of damage versus Europe's 64%. So the argument there is, do you lose the customers? Would you lose customers or not? Is that 20% nearly, or 19% of risk? Is it worth? Do you lose that much? Do you lose that many £100,000 customers, Mark? I think that's what we need to ask ourselves. The companies don't publicly disclose comparable figures, do they? So it's really difficult. But we do know that what's some of the stats that we do know, it's 83 to 64%. So we don't know the individual. United Rentals operates a formal protection plan. Boels has a damage waiver scheme. How efficient both of those are, I don't know. I know particularly damage waiver works very well in small tools, but I haven't seen evidence, to be fair, on anyone that's doing that kind of damage waiver on big plant in the UK or Europe. So the killer question, I suppose, rather than, how much damage does your business write off every year because you can't prove who caused it? That's the first thing. And if you can't prove who caused it, then you've got some proper process problems, haven't you, in your yard. You're not taking enough photographs. But the amount of hire companies out there that still don't come to put a machine out, and they still then go and go, oh shit, we've got broken glass, and it's been sitting in the yard for 4 weeks, and they haven't got now time to charge that customer because they haven't had the evidence. So what's wear and tear? What's good? Well, what's expected? I think it's still undefined. I don't know about your feelings on that, Mark. I mean, do you think it's still undefined, or do you think it's quite clear? Should we have damage waiver as a compulsory on every rental? I don't know.
Do you know what? I think there should be, if the whole industry adopted a damage waiver, I don't know what you want to call it, a damage waiver protection thing, yeah? If the whole industry, if every company, so let's say it was legislation, for example, everyone had to charge 10% on the higher rates, and that's what it is, then when you actually think about it, it removes the issues, doesn't it? Where, let's say I'm hiring from customer A, as you said, I've put a big gouge in the back of the counterweight, but I'm going to call them all wankers because they want to charge me, so I'm going to use customer B. Then customer B wants to charge me because I've knocked the mirror off, so I'm going to use customer C, and then I'm just going to go around in a big loop. So, like, at what point? Because, like you said, if you hired a Ferrari, you'd get in a lot of trouble for that. That you would have to pay for that. So why? Surely, if you are not giving the machine back in the same condition you got it, there's a charge, isn't there?
Well, I had this right way back in BCL. I looked at the damage waiver, and I know 2.5-3% for me turning over that much money. That would have covered all of my. I mean, let's take an average 20. I mean, we're talking 20 million revenue. Let's talk it based on revenue. If I took a 20 million turnover business, and charged, and that was all hire revenue, yeah? So just 20 million of hire revenue on my excavators, that's what I did, and I charged you 3%. That would raise me 600 grand. 3% wouldn't be a lot for you to pay on the rate, would it? But 600 grand would probably, for a 20 million pound company, cover most of the repairs and the wages and the workshop costs, don't you think?
Yeah.
If not all of it.
Yeah,
I was going to be raising like 1.8 million for my business to cover that, and everyone paid 3%. I could not get them to pay it because they were probably thinking, well, we don't fucking pay it now. So why would I pay an extra 3%? I think it might need to be, as you said, mandatory.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like tools, does it? 10%, 15%.
No. It could be, if it was mandatory and everyone charged it, it would be fair across the board then, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But I don't think people appreciate, and we done this when we was at college, right? It was really funny. We took I think it was Lynch actually, when we took a Lynch machine to Loughborough College many years ago, and we stuck them in a 14 or 15 ton machine, and we said to them, how much is this worth, and how much would you pay? And the figures were so all over the place. Some people thought it was worth, 10 grand. Some people thought it was worth 400 grand. Some people thought it was like you would rent the 14-tonner out for, 2-3 grand a week. I just think that's where we don't take control as an industry. We need to set the scene. This is how much this pays. And would you buy that? If you took a 100 grand Porsche, how much would you expect to pay for it per week? I bet that would be over £1,000 a week you'd be paying for that rental. But is it as an excavator? We want to give it away for half of that, really. But look, let's go for the scoring of hole 9. Commercialisation of damage protection is 35%. I take it was this. Yeah, hole 9. This is me reading it. You're the next one. Europe didn't score as well on that. They were like 0.25 to US 0.75. So a slight US advantage. Damage process and digital evidence capability. I don't think there's anything different there. I think the system's the system. You bring it in, you photograph it, you turn it round. You know what it goes out like. You should know what it comes back like. Have you got the right signing procedures on site? Evidence of actual damage cost recovery. There's no real comparable evidence, although it does say there's more of a percentage, but we couldn't really we couldn't really define that we defined that the US was clawing back more than the UK, but we didn't know what equipment. So it's quite close there. So we're giving it a score based on our matrix as the whole would be halved. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, because I think, look, it's not about size. It wasn't about geographic locations. It was about actually recovering who manages damage better, Europe or America. And of course, it would appear we've got the same systems and the same processes, but I think USA's got just slight advantage, as you said, in the fact that they commercialise it a bit more. But it's a half toll in my book, mate, as well.
Yeah, so half time, we're still 2 points adrift there. So we're now back into the back 9. This episode will take us up to hole 12. So we're back on the evens. Over to you, Mark.
All right, mate. Well, look, I grabbed my golf ball, my tee and my driver, and I tee it up at hole 10, and we're talking about technology. Who is using technology better to make rental easier, improve fleet performance, and give customers better information? So this hole, as we navigate through the course over the bunkers, will cover digital rental, customer portals, telematics, fleet data, system integration, AI, and automation.
So that's your GPS watch, is it?
Yeah. And unlike some of the earlier holes, there is strong evidence on both sides. So I'll tell you what, Mark, you head over to your ball and tee off and tell me all about what the USA is doing in this category.
Yeah, well, I was trying to find again another technical or a golf quote, but they're mainly about profit and loss. So I can't really find one about tech unless you know one from tech.
Not really. Apart from I use my GPS watch to count down the yardage as I get nearer the flag.
Yeah.
So
yeah, do you do quite well with that? Or you still find yourself in the bunker?
No, I do well with that, mate. I do really well.
What's your handicap now?
I've not been measured, but I'm probably something like probably 20, something like that. I'm not great. I can get round though.
You can get round. That's the main thing, right? So let's put my case. The strongest U example again on this is United Rentals. So its total control platform they have is much more than just an an online account. Customers can use it to what it says here. It says manage rental and owned equipment. They've got a system where you own your equipment, they'll look after it for you, which is something quite unique, I suppose, but something that maybe our hire companies could look at. If you have got owners out there, they probably haven't got the expertise in engineering, have they? So you can see equipment across all your job sites, track the utilisation, monitor the location, view the runtime. That's the most thing. The utilisation, fuel and service alerts. They're really big on this. Handle the invoices. So you can query the invoice when you're online. You can say, I don't agree with that, do agree with that. You can request a servicing online. That's for your own machine or their machine if you think they have not picked up on it, or it just needs that little bit of extra care because of the environment. And you get all sorts of notifications as you can set up your own account. And United says it has more than 200,000 fleet units fixed with telematic technology. So it gives them a huge amount of operating data. It can definitely come up and tell you what machine is performing against another machine. JCB against CAT, blah, blah, blah. Komatsu against, Sani. So the AI move is the big thing for the US. And let's face it, Mark, they rule AI. They've got all the AI companies over Europe. Yeah. So when we're talking about Loxam are trying to play a little bit of AI here and stuff like that, or Boels were, it's not the same thing, is it? They're using AI agents and AI-driven solutions. The current innovation program includes an AI equipment agent designed to help customers identify the right equipment for the project even. So they've got agents, you can go on the site and it can say, this is the type of machine, blah, 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 area, this is the type of muck I'm going to move, this is what's going to be, this is the land, and it can tell you exactly the equipment that you should use. It can also turn around and tell you that it's underutilised, or if it's a brand new machine, and you've never driven that thing and you don't know how to use the quick hitch, it will tell you all that kind of information. And in February 26, according to their site, it announced an integration with Procure Resource Management. So what is that? Allowing United Rentals equipment data to flow directly into customers' construction management systems. So United says it's a wider strategy to create open integrations that can generate AI-driven insights around productivity, safety, asset efficiency. That's possibly important. I don't know. I'm not running the site. It means the future isn't just like log into your company portal. It's a rental fleet becomes part of the customer's own technology ecosystem because you're merging it, aren't you, with your own system. So the APIs are there. You can connect it to your own system. You can find out why your job's going ahead, well or not. One of the reasons could be because the type of equipment you got. So my argument, again, is the advantage in scale. United Rentals can invest heavily in this technology because development costs can spread across billions of dollars of revenue, hundreds of thousands of assets. You can imagine to try and do that as it is. Technology being used to solve actual operating problems is probably the critical factor here. The contractor can identify equipment that's sitting idle, as I said, and off-hire it. Just get on with it. Who's idling too much when they're sitting there having a fag? That's the type of thing. There's loads of systems out there, but it's about what you do about it. So this isn't technology because someone wanted a shiny app. 200,000 telematic connected machines. Customer can see the equipment is, how much running and how much is running or not running, and whether they're actually using it. So now they're integrating that into information directly into this Procure, adding into AI. It can only start rumbling along. That's turning rental data into business intelligence. I think that's where we were saying we've got a lack of that connection in earlier holes. Well, that's my case, mate.
Okay, well, look, I'm representing Team Europe here, mate. I think we've got a stronger position than people might assume. Loxam says by 2025, every stage of its end-to-end customer journey has had been digitalised. Now, that includes ordering, online contract management, electronic signatures, the My Loxam portal, equipment geolocation, usage tracking, consumption monitoring, and remote troubleshooting. And importantly, because I know you mentioned about AI for your team, but importantly, Loxam is already deploying AI in predictive maintenance and fleet management. So Europe isn't merely catching up with customer apps, it's applying AI directly to the economies of the reliability of the fleet. If we go over to Boels, Boels also has a serious technology proposition through their app, My Boels. Customers can see rental history, active contracts, invoicing, digital delivery and collection notes, and live machine information. Its LOT information includes fuel level, battery voltage, error codes, real practical data. So if the battery voltage is deteriorating or a machine produces an error code, the customer and rental company can potentially respond before the asset has failed on site. Boels has also built up its own integration environment that has dedicated specialist resources working on telematics development. So what's my argument here, the European argument? Europe has a particularly interesting technology challenge. Boels operate across multiple countries, as we've said, and handles equipment from numerous manufacturers. That means its systems must bring together information from the OEMs, the machine protocols, languages, markets, and different customer systems. So Boels itself has acknowledged that the diversity of the brands, machines, and data makes telematics integration really challenging. And we had this, didn't we, Mark, years ago? And solving that problem could ultimately be more valuable than simply building technology around one standardized fleet. So don't assume America owns the technology. Loxam says the entire customer journey is now digital and already using AI for predictive maintenance. And Boels is feeding customers live fuel levels, battery voltage, and fuel codes. So the Europeans are doing this across different countries and a much more fragmented fleet environment. So that's technically a very different problem, and I think we've got there very well.
Yeah, okay, I suppose, yeah. I suppose the US, my right, gets the cleanest headline number. More than 200,000 United Rentals machines are telematic enabled. I mean, that's that. But Europe gets a stronger count, I suppose. Loxam says its complete customer journey is now digitalised, and AI is already being used for predictive maintenance and fleet management, according to their site. So let's have a look at the stats then, Mark.
Yeah, okay, mate. Well, look, if we look at the USA stats and we take United Rentals in, 200,000 plus units, United Rentals fleet units equipped with telematics. Total Control provides location, runtime, utilisation, fuel and service alerts, billing, service requests and reporting, and customer fleet analytics. United Rentals now has AI equipment agents, and in 2026, Procore telematics integration designed to bring rental equipment data directly into the contractor's existing software. So that's quite powerful stuff. We go over to Europe. We got Loxam. They're saying they've got 100% end-to-end customer journey digitalised. That's according to its 2025 results. AI is being deployed in predictive maintenance and fleet management, and Boels provides real-time LO2 information with fuel level, voltages, machine error codes. And Boels has also developed its own integration architecture around connected fleet technology. So, yeah, there's some powerful stuff from both sides there, Mark.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to be a bit tight with that, this, Mark. I know earlier on we had a debate that it might have been just ahead on the by the scalability, but I think we should pull that back really on the scalability. We should look at customers. Should a customer be able to order, extend, and off-hire everything without speaking to anyone? Do we want that? I think most people have got that option come in, or if not already. Will customers eventually stop phoning iDesks altogether? That's one of the questions around technology we've always said. Who owns the machine data? The OEM, the rental company, or the customer? And that's another thing, isn't it? I mean, I always say the owner. But the OEM seems to want you to plug into their system. And then we get into a different episode of could I dramatically change the rental pricing? But if I get back onto the scoring, I've just changed that back from what we spoke about before. It was going to be slightly ahead with the US, but I think that this should be a half point there, Mark.
All right, okay.
So,
What you think? This is a half toll, is it?
I think so, don't you?
Yeah, I'll go with that, mate. I'll go with that. There's good stuff from both sides, and I'll be honest with you, I was struggling to call it.
Yeah, I think that yes, the US could win based on that they've got all the AI technology, but if they weren't, but they've only got the AI companies, so it doesn't mean that Europe aren't using AI just because they don't own the AI companies, does it? So
It's a half point.
yeah, half point each.
So
I think. Do you think?
yeah. Listen, it's a half hole. I don't. The problem is both countries or both areas have got evidence of each, and no one is light years ahead of the other. So it has to be a half hole. I can't see one is outweighed the other.
No. So let's steam into hole 11 then.
Hole
Moving
11.
there, 2 more holes for this episode. We're nearly at the hour. So on the odds, here I go. So the question for this is the depot model. Really, it's around the depot model. Which is a better operating model? Fewer, larger American-style branches, or Europe's denser network of local depots? And this is really a battle between two philosophies. Really, scale the branch versus get closer to the customer. And unlike size and scale, being bigger doesn't automatically score you anything here. So we're judging the economics and the effectiveness of the model. So I steam into the case for the Americas, according again to the statistics or the websites that we found. United and Herc demonstrate the scale model perfectly. At the end of 2025, it says here it's operated 1,663 rental locations with 1,406 in the United States. That's United on its own. It employed approximately 27,900 people globally and carried roughly 22.7 billion of fleet at original equipment cost. These numbers tell us something important. A large American location can support an enormous amount of fleet and revenue. And because the market is increasingly consolidated, the depot doesn't necessarily have to be 5 miles from the customer. Technology and logistics extend its effective catchment area. So my argument, large branches create economic keys of scale instead of having 5 locations each carrying a manager, a hire desk, workshop, wash bays, yards, admin, and overheads does kill a hire company. We know that. Delivery fleet, duplication of stock because someone doesn't want to let that one go. They want to keep it. We've end up potentially. You can consolidate the infrastructure, which will potentially give you more revenue per location, greater fleet choice. Specialist technicians now, lower overhead per machine. I think. The depot becomes an individual operation rather than a simply local hire shop. So to go with my argument, to finalise or summarise my argument, why have 5 little depots all duplicating the same overhead? 5 managers, 5 workshops, 5 yards, 5 sets of administration. You'll probably say, well, you're lucky you've got the size in the country to be able to do that. We haven't, maybe. So my argument is build one proper operation, put serious fleet into it, give it brilliant logistics and technology, and let it service a much larger area. So that, to me, is a much more scalable business. But over to you, Mark.
All right. Well, look, the European case for this, Europe's gone in a different direction in the sense that Loxam operates around 1,120 branches in 30 countries. And as we covered before, Boels runs over 800 depots in 27 countries. So that's not simply historical baggage. There's an operational reason for it. European construction markets can be extremely local. Road congestion, urban density, geography, and customer expectations mean proximity actually does matter. A machine sitting 15 miles away can be much more useful than one sitting 80 miles away. So we have a local depot argument here. A dense network potentially improves delivery time, collection time, transport costs, customer relationships, local market knowledge, of course, breakdown response, and fleet availability. And Plant Eye still has an unusual characteristic. Customers regularly need something immediately. And the builder doesn't necessarily order everything 3 weeks in advance because things break, the job changes, another excavator is required tomorrow or a pump's needed today. And that's where proximity becomes really extremely valuable. So, my argument in a nutshell is the spreadsheet says consolidate the branches, but a customer says, I need a machine at 7 tomorrow morning. Plant hire isn't Amazon. Yeah. So if you're moving tons of equipment around congested roads, sometimes the smartest distribution model is simply having the machine 20 minutes away.
Yeah, I get that. The numbers do get a bit interesting when you look at that, but I think does the model fit into Europe because of the geography of Europe, and does the US, model suit because of that? I mean, I think we might end up deciding that, but yeah, let's do a crude calculation though. So United Rentals, we said 16.1 or 16 billion, 1,600 locations, works out 9.7 million revenue per location. Now take Loxam. It's about 2.47 or 2.5, you said, I can't remember, revenue across your 1,120 branches. That's approximately 2.2 million per branch.
Big difference.
So, these figures are not perfectly comparable. However, there's different business mixes, currencies, branch definitions. I get that. But the magnitude is fascinating, I think. You know what I mean? The American model appears capable of putting dramatically more revenue for each operating location. So we need to understand why that is. That's an enormous overhead efficiency argument, I think, for Team US. Not only are they producing more revenue per depot, per location, but we know that the profitability and the margins are higher. Now, maybe that's because of exactly that. Because it's like that old argument. You used to have a small tool company in every street in the town, but over years, the tool hire companies come up with super depots, didn't they? And it was all about one location and getting it out and having more lorries. I think when you go back to the wise old days of multi equipment, if you remember multi, he had 5 depots. He got more in the end, but he had a few depots. But his idea was to buy another truck to get around London rather than open a new location. So that's that. But I get the European counter. Revenue per branch maybe isn't the same as profit per branch. I get that. People might say, well, look, that was the profitability, or the same as customer service quality or transport economics. And both Europe and US are kind of level on that. So let's say, Europe spends over 500,000 operated on a local depot, but the depot saves 250 grand transport, 150 lost hires, 100,000 breakdown response, and protects 3 million of customer revenue. Closing it because its standalone P&L looks weak could be disastrous, and we all get that. But that's why depot profitability is actually more complicated than it looks. But in theory, is that the same as having a loss leader? If a depot's not being efficient, should we really have it? Is it your turn for the stats? I don't know.
Yeah, let me run through the stats on that whole, and then we can work out the scoring here. So, USA, looking at United Rentals, 1,406 US locations at the end of the year 2025, with 16.1 billion United Rentals 2025 revenue, 22.7 billion of fleet at original equipment cost, with 9.7 million crude total revenue per global United Rentals location. So we'll compare that with Europe, 1,120 branches in 30 countries, Loxam, 800 depots in 27 countries, Boels, Loxam 2025 revenue at 2.47 billion, 2.2 million crude Loxam revenue per branch. So the revenue per location calculation is illustrative, not a perfect like by like for a productivity measure though. You know, United Rentals produces roughly 9.7 million revenue for every global rental location, whereas Loxam's crude equivalent is around 2.2 million per branch. So is America's depot model 4 times better, or is it completely the wrong way to measure a depot?
I don't know. I mean, the questions for debate, I suppose, for people to jump on is like, what is the ideal catchment radius for a plant hire depot? We're talking plant hire as well, slightly different than tools. Would you rather operate one 10 million depot or have 5 2 million depots? I suppose that's one of the arguments. Has technology made local depots less important? Because I suppose when you go way back, you'd have to literally drive in because you couldn't get on the phone if you had one phone line. Do you know what I mean? Years ago. So you'd drive in and have a look, wouldn't you? And then you're on the phone, and now you can order online. So, and pretty much you can get stuff delivered overnight. I mean, look at the great model that BPH had in the UK when they were doing and building their attachments business. They wouldn't worry that they didn't have a depot down in Cornwall. They'd stick it on a pallet, that breaker, and they'd ship it down to you overnight. It cost them about 30 quid, and you were happy to pay the 30 quid because you knew it was coming from London to Cornwall. You didn't work out how much it would be, why it was so cheap when you couldn't take it down from there. You just plugged it in and got on with it. So, I don't know, I think maybe, depot P&L, but still, is it still as strategically essential to have the depot P&L? Well, I think it is because you want to know where you are. But as an overall, do you look at it like that? I don't know. So yeah, I mean, look, when I go through the scoring again on the whole 11, there was four sections here: operating efficiency, scale per location, customer proximity and responsiveness, transport fleet positioning efficiency, and scalability and overhead leverage. So when I looked at that and we looked at this, yes, the US was winning the operating efficiency, scale per location. That was a high part of the ranking. Europe was better at customer proximity and responsiveness. Transport fleet positioning efficiency, it ranked 20% of the mark, and Europe came on top of that. And then scalability and overhead leverage, USA pretty much came on top of that. So it was generally hard to separate it, Mark. And it was another half score.
Nice.
So let's round this up with hole 12.
Okay.
Let's see where we are. We're on the evens, so it's over to you.
Yeah, okay, mate. So hole 12, as we both walk up onto the tee area, is people and productivity. The question: who gets more commercial output from every person employed in the rental business? So, of course, this isn't about who pays more, who has the happier employees. We're asking how much revenue, EBITDA, and operating capability does each employee support? This is a crucial hole because labour is one of the industry's biggest costs, and the answer tells us whether America's scale actually creates a leaner operating model. So, again, USA versus Europe. Mark, over to you for the USA case.
Yeah, so, again, I know we're focusing on a couple of companies here, but we're trying to focus mainly on the companies that we get the best stats and the best information from, and obviously with a lot of independents in different parts of the world, it's really hard to get the accounts and stuff like that, isn't it? True reflection. Yeah. But United Rentals again gives us a very strong benchmark in 2025, as we've already said, 16 billion, 27,900 employees. That works out roughly 577,000 revenue per employee. And with an adjusted EBITDA of approximately 7.33 billion, that's 263,000 adjusted EBITDA per employee. These are extraordinary productive numbers for a business that still has to maintain equipment, deliver equipment, operate, sell, collect, you name it, repair, wash. whatever you've got to do with plant nowadays. And again, like another test, I take Herc, gives another American benchmark. Following there was a major acquisition with H&E. Herc reported a 2025 revenue of about 4.38 billion. An enlarged organisation had roughly 15,000 employees after the acquisition. That implies accrued revenue per employee of around about $292,000. Now, that was before they backscaled and they've got the business to where they felt it should be with less people. So that's going to be a lot higher when those figures are announced. Herc has simultaneously integrated hundreds of locations and mixture of different types of workforce and really now cutting the cloth to suit. So I think, the revenue per employee stands out. My argument that America has built a business capable of putting enormous revenue through relatively concentrated operated substructures. So real detail within the depot, technology, centralised administration is a big thing for the US. I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that in Europe. National accounts, large, obviously, depots, standardised processes, which of course Europe have got as well. But agreed, equally good digital customer platforms. So this is where scale should actually prove itself, in my opinion. I know we've tried to push away from scale, but United Rentals is generating nearly $600,000 of revenue for every employee. That's not just because the machines are expensive. It's because they're standardising the processes, the centralised functions, and they've invested heavily in technology, in my opinion. If the scale doesn't improve productivity, what's the point of getting big? There is none, is there? That's my case, the argument for the US of A.
Right. Well, look, Europe, let's come at you with this. Look, you've hit one. It's faded over to the left. Let's see if we can go past you now. So, look, the case here for Europe, taking Boels, 2025, Boels generated 1.862 billion in revenue with 8,800 actually employees. That gives crude revenue per employee of approximately 212,000 euros. Boels generated approximately 590 million EBITDA, which equates to around 67,000 euros of EBITDA per employee. So on the headline numbers, United Rentals that you spoke about looks dramatically more productive, but we need to be careful. Loxam generated 2.47 billion of revenue and employs roughly 12,000 people across its international operations, giving an approximate revenue per employee of 206,000 euros. Again, significantly below the United Rentals headline number that you were talking about. But we've got two major European groups producing broadly similar results. So we've got Boels, 212,000 revenue per employee, Loxam, 206,000 euros of revenue per employee, versus your United Rentals of $577,000 of revenue per employee. So even after allowing for the currency, that's a substantial gap, to be fair. What exactly are these employees doing? And this is crucial. Different companies outsource different activities, in the sense that one rental company may employ drivers, mechanics, cleaners, transport planners, workshop staff, administration. Yet another may outsource significant amounts of transport, maintenance, cleaning, security, IT or back office work. So the second company suddenly looks much more productive per employee, but it hasn't necessarily become more productive. All it's done is move the labour from payroll to supplier cost. Yeah. So that's why revenue per employee is useful but dangerous. If you don't sub that much out, then you get a better picture. So look, in a nutshell, the European complexity argument is Europe carries structural labour overhead that America doesn't experience to the same degree. Imagine operating across 20 plus European countries. You potentially need separate HR knowledge, payroll, tax compliance, employment law expertise, language capability, finance functions, regulatory knowledge, and country management. So that's a lot of organisational complexity that you potentially would not need in the US. Yeah. So revenue employee is interesting, but don't confuse simplicity with productivity. America has one gigantic integrated home economy. Of course, that creates opportunities to centralise more. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think there's a counter argument with what you said there. It's because we choose to run the employment law that way, but we're meant to be a combined Europe, aren't we? So surely Loxam could have a combined employment law for the whole of their organisation, like you would do if you work for EasyJet, who fly everywhere around Europe, and Ryanair. Surely if you come to work, it's Europe's own making rather than use it as an excuse for Europe. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I do.
so normally you'd have the killer stat, but it's my turn for the killer stat. I even wrote it down here as like a fantastic one for Stato, Mark the Stato. But because I think I just want to put two numbers on the table. United Rentals equals £570,000 revenue per employee versus Boels, £212,000 revenue per employee. Even allowing for currency fluctuation, I mean that's dollars and euros. United Rentals is generating well over twice as much revenue per employee. So that kind of on its own demands, I think, if I'm sitting there in the board of Bowles, Loxam, any of these big hire companies, surely that demands some kind of explanation. But look, let me give you the last charts of the stats, just to remind everybody.
What the numbers for the USA and that and Europe?
Yeah, why not?
Look, if we give a run through of what we spoke about on this whole USA United Rentals, 16.1 billion revenue with 27,900 employees. That equates to 577,000 revenue per employee, 7.33 billion adjusted EBITDA. So that's 263,000 adjusted EBITDA per employee. We take Europe, we look at Bowles, 1.862 billion revenue, 8,800 employees, 212,000 euros revenue per employee, 590 million EBITDA, 67,000 EBITDA per employee. We'll just quickly run through Loxam there. So 2.47 billion revenue, 12,000 employees, 206,000 euros revenue per employee. Big difference.
Yeah. But yeah, look, as we made a note here, we can't simply award America the point based on revenue per employee. However, we can look at the different arguments. I mean, the labour productivity, the market economics, the whole of this European bullshit. The independent operator question. There's another fascinating possibility that the Europe giants may not actually represent Europe's most productive operators. So, a strong regional independent can potentially run one central office, lean management, highly experienced depot teams. So that's more, I think that's what we should tell the listeners and explain, that even if America nicked the point, Europe nicked the point, whatever, that Europe actually within the independent side is perhaps maybe slightly like the American model, with lean management, minimal bureaucracy, probably outsourced transport most of the time, and with a tightly controlled overhead. So many of the independents should therefore outperform the big groups on profit per employee, in my opinion. That'd be fascinating to look at, even in the UK, I think, if we go back and say, right, 70% of these independents, what's the profit ability per employee? But the difficult thing is, obviously, they haven't got the accounts as the big company. That's going to change, hopefully, in the next couple of years, by the way, where everyone has to show their P&L as a small company, which is great. So questions for people to send in and answer and maybe reply. What's actually a good revenue per employee figure? That's what we should know, shouldn't we? In plant hire, someone should come up with that. should every hire company measure profit per employee monthly? That wouldn't be a bad thing. You know, what did you bring in as an individual? You know, how many people does 10 million hire depot actually need? That's always an argument. Remember the old A-plant days, Mark, where you say if you got to add another $5,000 a week to your revenue and you can employ another person and you could choose who that was. Do you remember that, them days?
I do. Yeah, it was back in the old A-plant days. I think it was it 6,000? 6,000 would get you another member of staff, and you had to choose: do we need it in the workshop or do we need it on the hire desk? It was really, you know.
Yeah, it was your question, wasn't it? Yeah, it was up to you to make the decision. So, I mean, that's why I suppose the A-plant model was so good. It taught so many people how to be a manager because it was the first time anyone let you loose on the P&L, wasn't it?
Big time, yeah.
You know, and could a 20 million hire company operate with half today's people in 10 years' time? I think technology is probably showing that, isn't it? You know, and the model that you've got, if you're struggling with too many depots, you know, what does that model look like? Could you centralise some of them services? I don't know. But look, end of the depot, end of the thing, the whole for this episode. We've come in whole 12. Revenue per employee 40% was the weighting. EBITDA profit per employee was 35%, and operating complexity, you know, was 25%. And revenue and EBIT was more important because that's what business is about. The major US advantage was scored on both, and the complexity obviously came in for Europe. So, in the last hole for this week, unfortunately, Mark, I've chipped in from the edge of the green, and you've just popped past the hole. But you know that's it. Anyone else will say I've stitched you up with Europe? Well, I don't think so. There's still 6 holes to go next week, and that's where we're going to leave the episode. You know, we've now played 12 holes. Team Europe's 4.5. Team US 7.5. So America's opened up to a 3-point lead. Can they keep it there? And I think I'm beginning to see why. The American model has come with some enormous strengths: scale, profitability, utilisation, and now people and productivity. So we must get over there and learn perhaps a bit off them. However, will Europe come back? There's plenty of good arguments, more in Europe's favour, I think, in the next episode. When you start looking at some of the numbers these businesses produce, can you see what consolidation, technology and standardisation alone can achieve within your own business if you look at the American model? But I don't think the lesson from these 12 holes is simply bigger is better. Far from it. I think Europe has shown strengths of its own, and we've now halved a lot of holes. Once you dig beneath the headline numbers, there are generally arguments for both models, I think, on each one. They've been really close. And somebody would score this differently, perhaps. I don't know. Sometimes we're not looking at one side along the right and the other doing it wrong. That's not what we're doing. So Europe often relies more on density, local knowledge, flexibility and operating across very different markets compared to the American trends to use scale, systems and standardisation. And there are still 6 points available. Next time, we've got some fascinating holes to come. You know, used equipment, acquisition, specialist rental, and one last could be particularly interesting. The finally would be the independence, because after spending all the time talking about billion dollar rental companies, we're eventually going to turn the whole question around. Where would you actually rather own an independent plant hire company, Europe or America? So we're down 12 holes down, 7.5 to the USA, 4.5 to Europe. Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe. Any messages, Mark?
No, just thanks for watching, everybody. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget as well to tell everyone else to like and subscribe, and share our videos with your friends, family, colleagues, and anyone else.
And dig in deep. Lovely. Thank you.
The opinions expressed within this podcast are solely the individuals and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the sponsors or its affiliates.